The term late unpleasantness is a euphemism used primarily in the southern United States to refer to the American Civil War, 1861 to 1865. It was a way for Southerners, particularly in the decades following the war, to acknowledge the conflict without using direct or divisive language. This phrase often appeared in conversations and literature as a means of minimizing the war's impact or avoiding contentious discussions about its causes and consequences. The American Civil War was one of the most devastating conflicts in U.S. history, driven primarily by deep-seated disagreements over slavery, states' rights, and economic disparities between the North and South. The Southern states, fearing the loss of their way of life, seceded from the Union and formed the Confederate States of America. This led to a brutal war that resulted in over 600,000 deaths, widespread destruction, and profound societal changes. The war ended in 1865 with the defeat of the Confederacy, the abolition of slavery, and the beginning of Reconstruction, a complex and often contentious period aimed at reintegrating the Southern states into the Union and granting civil rights to formerly enslaved people. In the years following the war, many Southerners struggled to reconcile their loss and the drastic social changes that came with it. The phrase late unpleasantness emerged as a genteel, somewhat ironic way of referring to the conflict without explicitly mentioning the suffering, destruction, and political upheaval it had caused. It reflected an attempt to move forward while also preserving a sense of regional identity and pride. The use of this phrase also reveals how memory and language can shape historical narratives. By downplaying the war's devastation, it allowed many in the South to maintain a sense of dignity in the face of defeat. The phrase was commonly used among former Confederates and their descendants, particularly in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. It appeared in newspapers, speeches, and personal correspondence as a way to reference the war indirectly. While it may seem quaint or even humorous today, its use was deeply tied to the complex emotions surrounding the South's experience of the war and its aftermath. Over time, the phrase fell out of common usage, as more direct and academic discussions of the Civil War became the norm. In conclusion, the late unpleasantness was more than just a euphemism, it was a reflection of how people cope with historical trauma and defeat. It symbolized an attempt to move forward while grappling with the immense changes the war brought to the South. Though it is rarely used today, it remains an example of how language can soften the harsh realities of history and influence collective memory.